The presenting sponsor of Moon Tower Soccer is FVF Law.
To find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm, you can visit fvf.law.
Hello, friends. Thanks for listening to Moon Tower Soccer. This week, we're going to review Austin's 1-0 win in the season opener over Kansas City. We'll preview this weekend's match in Portland, and we'll cover some other Austin FC news. My name's Landon Cottom, and I'm joined, as always, by Mr. Jeremiah Bentley.
Hey, everybody. I'm Jeremiah Bentley, and I don't think we talked about this last week, but I had the chance last week on Thursday night to talk to a group of Texas State PR students. There's a few hundred of them in an auditorium there at Texas State. And it was with a lot of the Austin FC original contributors, the whole thing coming to town. So it was Dave Greeley, who was originally with the team in Columbus, Kristen Markham, who put it all together at ECPR, Marty Butler, who talked about the design process, and they were supposed to have Gisela from Austin FC, who I think may be the actual first employee they had in Austin, but she had a family emergency and is still an employee in Austin. She had a family emergency and couldn't make it, but yeah, it was good to be able to talk to those students. And also, there was a lot of stuff that I hadn't thought about in a really long time. And it makes me happy that all that,
Yeah.
all the drama and all the everybody in Columbus hated us and we didn't know what the team was going to be named. And people wanted it to be like the Austin Soccer Bats or Willie Nelson. And we just decided, all that stuff all came back. And it was sort of fun to go back into good old days. But at the same point in time, I am very happy to have actual soccer to talk about right now.
Yeah, I 100% agree. It is funny to hear all of those names and all those people be in the same place again, because I would imagine all of them have not been in the same place very often since those days. But yeah, there are some very good memories from those days too, and a lot of excitement and hope for what was to come. But also, we weren't going to soccer games. We weren't watching soccer. I'll take these days over those days for sure.
Yeah, and I forgot the one other part about that. Without Gisela there, okay, I was the only person on the panel that really has any association with the club today, right? Because the Butlers don't do design work. They have their own in-house PR and comms team. Dave Greeley doesn't work for the club or front office anymore, right? So when it came to Austin FC of today and in the future, it's kind of the only person that had much insight on that since Gisela wasn't there, which was also kind of wild. And the other thing I forgot about that was a big part of that story when we were talking about the stadium was the original, they're going to build a stadium downtown, which was a brief moment in time that a lot of people were really excited about and a lot of Austin was really upset about. And we're probably better off for that not happening, but that was a part of the story I'd totally forgotten.
Yeah, I was talking about that for whatever reason recently with some friends from out of town talking about local politics. And I was there's Austin City Council has its pros and cons, but one thing that they will do is protect public parks and green spaces, which is one of the things about them I do really appreciate. So
yeah, they did that there.
Not to mention no public transportation to get to a downtown stadium.
Right. The one train line we have now is what will get you to that stadium. So speaking of that, let's maybe get into the news of the week. I felt a little bit out of practice writing an outline for a match since we haven't done one in a few months. And we just talked about that before we went on air, sort of the way we do these things. But yeah, Austin picks up a 1-0 win at home against Sporting Kansas City. Good opening result. I know maybe not as much as some people who were wanting a 2022 opener 4-0, 5-0 win wanted, but
okay,
3 points is 3 points, Landon. 3 points is what matters.
Let's not get greedy here. Yeah, I mean, it was, I think you could, if you take out a few moments of this game, I think you could call it a dominant performance from Austin. The goal that ended up coming was not, if you just watch that, you might say, oh, Austin got a little lucky with that one. But Austin deserved a goal in that game and was creating other good chances. And so I think the end result was fair. Austin looked like the much better team for 90% of the game. And I mean, I was telling you off air that it's been kind of a wild week for me. Just family stuff and stuff going wrong at the house and canceled flights and crappy hotel rooms and illegal taxis and just lots going on. And a Verde win went down real smooth after all of that.
Yeah, how cold did it get in your house? You said you got back and the heater wasn't working, and it was when
Ye
it was really cold in Austin at that point in time.
the house got down to 53. I started burning wood and then was gonna leave town the next day and was worried like, okay, I'm gonna leave my house when the low is like 21 without any heating in it, and got it fixed. Everything worked out. It was just stressful. So yeah, it all worked out fine. None of these are super serious problems, but this victory on the season opener definitely helped me for sure.
Well, one thing I want to get into just to compare this season to previous seasons. This is one where Austin, I mean, Austin scores one goal, so it's not like a lot of offensive output. Austin has 59% possession, which I think it become like a running joke that if as long as Austin wins the possession game and wins the XG game, that's all that matters, regardless of the score on the field. But one thing I thought was interesting, if you look at the passing stats, which we don't necessarily always talk about a lot, Austin has almost 3 times as many passes in the opposition half, more than 3 times as many passes as Kansas City in the final third, and by far more accurate long balls. This feels like a very different, more aggressive, forward-thinking domination of possession than we maybe have seen for at least last year, 2021.
Absolutely. Yeah, the way it was played, Austin was gonna have more of the ball. SKC was not necessarily pressing super high all that often. They were allowing Austin to have it. They were sitting back pretty deep whenever they did get into those spaces. But when Austin got into those moments, it looked much different than it has the last couple of years. We've heard a few players in media availabilities and post game press stuff talk about freedom, that Nico gives them freedom. And they are still using positional principles similar to what Josh Wolff used, but they're using them in a different way. And so it's less this guy in this position and more like somebody in this position. We don't care who's there, but if someone makes a run, we need somebody to fill in that space, or somebody to show in this area, somebody to be an option, somebody to be um rest defense in case of a transition moment. Like, we still need people in those spots, but it seems like they care less about who it is and like, no, don't just stand there. Okay, make a run, and somebody's going to fill in for you. And then also like when with the ball, it's less about like this, then this, and more if this, then this. And that just the way they were moving the ball, and I think there's some tactical stuff, some strategic stuff going into it, but then also adding someone like Ilie into that mix, having a guy like Biru floating into the midfield, like there's a personnel upgrade in a lot of spots too that allowed this to be true. But I think there's a lot of tactical and strategic stuff going into it as well. And yeah, they were moving the ball a lot quicker, playing less predictably, playing more vertically, and it was a lot of fun to watch at times. We'll get into maybe some of the stuff that didn't work quite as well, but lots to be encouraged by.
Yeah, what did Nico called it? Verticalidad.
Yeah.
We did. We got the quote. We got the quote. It's like the what the Bart Simpson, where it's like say the thing, and then he does.
Yeah.
We got a little bit of that, but yeah, it was Verticalidad. I don't know if he said ruthless or not, but it was good to see from them for sure. And then I think we have to talk about, I mean, off the top, because he's the guy that got the goal, and I thought he had an interesting performance, maybe in kind of good ways and bad ways, both a little bit. Is Osman Bukari. So obviously super talented, gets the goal. I don't know if you want to talk about the goal now, but I kind of wanted to talk about like what we saw from him overall.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, he gets the goal. We kind of alluded to this. It was uh, a little bit of a fluky goal, but again, I don't think that's necessarily representative of his game or this game overall. But yeah, it comes in from a corner, gets through traffic, all the traffic at the near post, and I saw some folks pointing out online that having someone like Brandon Vasquez, having some big guys crashing that near post, they're going to draw attention. And so if it does get through, there's going to be fewer guys on that other side. And so it gets there, essentially bounces off of his face and into the goal. There was a question of a handball. They they review it, but it doesn't even go to the monitor, and they end up allowing the goal. But yeah, his game overall, they were able to get him the ball in wide spaces, but it wasn't necessarily isolated all the time. Kansas City had a lot of guys over there. And so it wasn't necessarily him going 1v1 with someone, which is what you would like to see them do. But I think Bukari did well in those moments with what he was given. I'm curious to see what it will look like with Uzuni also on the field, and if that would relieve some pressure, maybe allow them to go both directions. I think the gravity of him will help some, but I do still think there needs to be maybe it's a chemistry thing, a kind of just gelling together and learning tendencies and things like that. But I think there needs to be some idea of like, okay, we get the ball to Bukari there. There's four dudes just sitting there waiting for him. What happens now?
Yeah, and do you think, back to your point about less this guy in position and more than someone in this position, does the fact that this team hasn't really played together a lot and have that chemistry, does that contribute to maybe how there was like some disconnection and more goals didn't come? Because you feel like in order for that kind of play to work, people need to like intuitively be able to play off each other. And I think it's very unlikely that one game into the season, people are going to be able to do that.
Yeah, I think there's definitely something to that. We saw a moment with Vasquez turns off of a guy and kind of creates his own shot. And after he shoots, he's yelling at some guys over to the side, like, give me that inside, like slanted run. And those are the things that like, okay, after they play a bit, they'll start to know, okay, if Brandon has the ball here, he's going to want me to do this. And they just don't know those things yet.
Yeah. And then one thing, I mean, I thought it was a little bit uneven. This is something we talked about last year where sometimes it feels like he's trying to do too much with the ball. There were some moments where he dribbled a lot against a bunch of dudes, and maybe there was a chance to lay the ball off. I'm thinking one where he kind of dribbled across the box fairly early on. Do you think that, like, is that something we should worry about from him, or is that just like a tendency early on, or like, am I reading too much into that way that he's played sometimes?
I don't know. I mean, there were moments last year where he shot where I thought maybe a cutback or a layoff was maybe the right decision. He seems to be forcing that kind of stuff less. I'm okay with him forcing dribbles sometimes, but it's what comes after that, like not forcing shots when there are passes. I didn't get that same feeling in this game. It felt more structural to me. Like, okay, he's over there now. Like, it felt like he didn't have many other options but to dribble in a lot of those moments. So I was less worried about his decision making and more about the overall structure.
Well, that makes sense, and that definitely is something that changes. Hopefully, I said when Uzuni is town, but he's in town. But hopefully, next week we'll see him play a little bit, and maybe that changes it up a bit.
One other thing I was curious about is, so Bukari's been playing on the left. We saw that in most of preseason and in most of this game until late when the subs came on. He did switch over to the right hand side. When Uzuni comes on, what do we think we're going to see? Is this a placeholder for this set of players, and then when Uzuni comes on, he's going to go to the left, Bukari will go to the right? Or do we think that's Bukari's side and Uzuni will go over to the right side?
I mean, that would seem out of character from what we've seen from Uzuni so far, right? Isn't Uzuni like much more likely in his career to play on the left than on the right? I mean, on the left and up the middle.
Yeah, but Bukari was much more likely to play on the right through most of his career as well. So, one thing that I would be curious about is when Bukari plays on the right, he is right-footed. He seems more comfortable getting to the inline and going, instead of cutting back inside, like beating guys to the inline, and that would allow him to put in a more comfortable cross, to put in a more comfortable cutback with his right foot. I'm curious if that would maybe solve some of those structural problems we're talking about, where instead of his tendency to go inside, it's to get up the field a bit more. I could also see like, okay, we want him to be on his right foot when he's shooting, cutting in on that side. So I don't know the right answer. I'm curious to see what Estevez does once he does have all options available.
Well, me too. And I think about it a lot. And I have Estevez in the back of my mind saying that formations are for idiots or whatever he said. So, like, I mean, you can also see if you look at where like Owen Wolff played super high, and you can also see it nominally being like a 4-4-2 with Uzuni and Vasquez up top, and like sort of Owen playing on one wing, and then Bukari being wherever he's most comfortable being too, in terms of like in the offensive attack, right? Does that seem like an option?
Uh, Again, like rotationally, yes, I think maybe those guys will end up in those spots at certain moments, but um, I don't. Yeah, I mean, I think Bukari is going to be on one of the wings, and then which one it is, and then where he goes after that, who knows?
Who knows? Yeah. One thing I wanted to note, he did a really great interview with Corey Mose. I think was that today? Or, I saw it.
I
Today.
saw it posted today. I don't know when
Yeah, I
it
saw
came
it
out.
posted
Yeah.
today. But if you like if you don't already love that dude, you should watch that for a few minutes and love that dude even more as a player and as a human and as a person who really appreciates like what he has been given, what he has earned, right? From his upbringing to where he is now. And I don't know that any of it we're so super surprised by because of what we know about him and him going back to Africa and giving back, but it's just really good to see him tell this story.
Yeah, absolutely. Always like seeing Corey Mose too.
Yeah, Corey Mose is a fun dude for sure. And then I guess one last thing maybe before we break, Brad Stuver did not have a lot to do, but he had a very critical, if you believe that goals can change games, especially like a very critical moment in the first half where he has like a save with his foot, and then luckily Willie Agata like launches the ball into the fifth row at an open net. So I thought that's probably worth talking about too in the opening.
Yeah, I mean, not a ton of save. I want to say maybe I don't know. I don't have the numbers. Do you have
I
the
think it was
numbers in
two
front of you?
shots on target. I think they only had
Okay.
two, so he had one save. I think.
One I remember.
Two
is it
saves.
Manu Garcia, the Spanish guy that was playing in Greece. Is that his name?
That
Number
is his
21?
name. Yeah, yeah.
He had one of the shots and it essentially just bounced into Stuver's chest. And so that was one of them, if there's only two, I think. And then the other one was a very good save on Shallowy. But that is part of being a quality goalkeeper, is staying focused in a game where you don't have much to do and then still coming up big when you are called on. And for a guy that like didn't play that much throughout his career, it is impressive that Stuver has that composure, has that focus to do that in a game like this, because he hasn't had many games like this in his Austin FC career.
No, he has not. He's had lots of games where he's had a lot of shots fired at him nonstop all the time. But to have to only come up in a couple of moments, but still do that, was great for him. So it's good to hear some Stu chants again, and good for him to perform that way.
Yeah. Lots of other players to talk about, some other tactical stuff, some other moments to talk about, but let's take a quick break and then we'll come back and do all of that. When no one is around. Moontower Soccer is brought to you by our friends at FEF Law, the official injury lawyers of Austin FC.
FEF is a different kind of personal injury law firm dedicated to community, transparency, and client education. And they have their own podcast called Summary Judgment. You can check it out wherever you get your podcast.
You can go to FEF.law to find out what makes FEF a different kind of injury law firm and why understanding your legal options can dramatically change the outcome of a case. Once again, that's FEF.law. Amplify Credit Union is a member-owned financial cooperative that served the needs of Central Texans for over 5 decades. As a credit union, Amplify has no shareholders or parent companies. That means more of your money stays in the community.
Amplify has been the home of free banking since 2022. Their free checking accounts come with 0 overdraft fees or minimum balances. That means Amplify's fee-free checking accounts help you get more mileage for your everyday spending.
Amplify membership is open to any Texas resident. Learn to trust your bank again at Amplify Credit Union. To learn more and to register for free parking at the Amplify Esperanza branch on game day, go to www.goamplify.com/moontower-soccer. All right, we are back. We're going to talk more about the 1-0 win against Sporting KC. Jeremiah, where should we start?
Well, let's kind of start with the pregame narrative. We talked about before we started recording. There were, I think, 3 press availabilities this week. That may include the food one. I don't remember for sure.
No, I think the Uzuni,
that's right,
and then Estevez and Ilie.
And Ilie, yeah. So busy week, and so we can't get into that in the way that we normally would because there's so much game stuff to talk about. I think the Nico one, question 1 after the preseason match was like, would Bukari be healthy? We got that right off the bat. Like, yeah, he was fine.
Just a
pulled
cramp.
up. Yeah, just a cramp. That's right, just a cramp. Then we got the announcement that Ilie would be the team captain, and he came on. I don't know, it was like charmed everybody in 2 languages, right? For as long as he talked, like he was so good. So like maybe let's get into that a little bit.
Yeah, it was. He is charming, but this I felt like this one specifically was not just charm. That there was substance there, and that he said the things you want him to say. I heard some folks a little bit surprised that it was Ilie because he's a new guy and hasn't been here. They were thinking maybe it would be Julio or Stuver or Heinz Ike getting the captain's armband. I think if you have any doubts of whether or not Ilie is a worthy captain, watch this press conference from last week and then watch this first game against Kansas City, and I don't think it leaves any doubts. Like, this is a leader. It's a guy who knows what he's doing, who has the personality to be able to motivate and unify a team. I'm very happy with this pick.
And you say that, and that is very true both on and off the pitch, right? Like, because during the game, he was like directing people and really like a vocal leader on the field during the match. And then also, I think this is extra important. MLS seems to be really trying to enforce the captain is the only person who can talk to the officials
Right.
rule this year. And in that situation, there's absolutely nobody better on this team to be able to do that than Ilie. And just the way he approaches, you like imagine Alex Ring going over and berating the officials and seeing what comes out of that, as opposed to like whatever the Ilie approach is. Like, it seems very different.
Yeah, I mean, there are different approaches, and I'm sure both are effective in certain situations. But Ilie is a guy who he talked about in that press conference how he knows all the refs, all the players in the league know him, all the refs, all the coaches know him, and everyone respects him. I've never heard anybody say a bad thing about Ilie, and so if Ilie comes up to you, maybe yelling at him can put some pressure on him and make him question the next decision. But if Ilie comes up and expresses concern, I feel like if I were in that situation, I'd be like, maybe I should reassess my life choices if Ilie is disappointed in me right now.
yeah, that's what Ilie is like. I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed, right? Shout out to my mom who used that on me a lot. And then the Uzuni event also was held inside at what was formerly the Captain Morgan Club, now Club TBD. Huge turnout. Dude wore a t-shirt and a tuxedo vest, which I always appreciate. As a fan of formal wear.
Eastern Europe energy in that one.
Yeah. I don't know how much he said that was like new revealing, other than like the guy is pretty serious about wanting to succeed and make a difference in this league. And then we got the Rodolfo Burrell.
Oh wait, I want to talk about the Uzuni thing a bit more as well.
Go for it.
Swoon Tower is back. They did the SKC preview as the first part of that show, so that's less relevant now. But the back half of the show is just an episode of Swoon Tower, and it is a banger. It's a very good episode. One of the segments is them analyzing Uzuni's outfit and estimating the total cost of his outfit at that press conference. And it was a lot of fun. It's a very good episode, and it's a very good show. They're much better at making podcasts than we are, and you should listen to them.
And I forgot about the accessories until right now, but that man definitely knows how to put the pieces together too, for sure. So yeah, check that out. Sorry,
go ahead. But we were about to move on to the Burrell. Actually, I want to say one more thing about Uzuni as well. Again, he says a lot of the things you're supposed to say. I'm here to help the team. I'm here to win. But then there is also like a determination in his voice. And one of the things he said that like, I don't know why this like struck me this way, but he said that the fans spend their money, their time coming to the stadium to support us. And I think the quote was, "It's my job to make the fans happy." And I don't know, that statement said the way that he said it, for some reason struck a chord with me. Is like, that is your job, isn't it? Like, I know there's a lot more to it, but at the end of the day, it is your job to entertain these people and go and score goals. And he seems very determined to do that.
I was going to say that's what I got out of it. It wasn't just lip service, but it's his actual statement of intent about it. Okay, so yeah, Roto we get on Friday, 53 minutes, mostly Roto talking. It's very, very Burrell like presser, which I appreciate. There's like a constant narrative. A little bit of trash talking to Jorge Thoralde, which I always appreciate. Appreciation of the big dollar moves. What was the thing he said about somebody's? Oh, was it Jorge that was asking him about spending so much in this window? And he said basically, I made enough money off of selling Driussi to pay for the salaries of all three DPs, so don't worry about the financial side of it.
He said so he got the 10 million from Driussi, and so that cuts into the transfer fees. But he was saying something that I think we had theorized might be true, and he confirmed it, that the salaries of all three of those guys fits into the salary of Driussi with
one
a surplus,
Driussi. Yeah,
with like leftover money to go, which I thought was probably going to be true, and he confirmed that it is. So yeah, he said that, like, okay, we spend a lot of money, but we're also saving money in other spots. And then I think there's another question about not spending money on some of the other spots. And he's like, no, I'm being frugal here in other spots so that whenever we need to spend money, we can. And so Dessler was a bargain for this quality. Biru is a bargain for his quality. A lot of guys coming in on free transfers or much cheaper than what you would have been able to get them in other circumstances. And so I think I've heard fans say, like, oh, I would like to have another Max TAM player. Like, yeah, that would be great. But we've got some TAM level quality on the team. Just because they're not making that money doesn't make them less good at soccer. We've got a lot of good players in the soccer who probably good players on the team who probably should be making more money than they do right now.
Yeah, that's very true. And then he had a story sort of about his background. So
this was great. I really enjoyed this part of it.
Yeah, and I want to say before this, one great question from Moises from Verde All Day to get it brought up. And then two, if you're not subscribing to Verde All Day, you should, because you can get the full story of it. Basically, like, grew up in a family where soccer, grew up in Barcelona, and a family where soccer was not a big deal. And he said he was kind of the black sheep up until the point when he got the job with FC Barcelona, and just really open and bearing himself about like his journey. And I think maybe it helped me understand his passion a little bit. Sometimes I'm like, man, this guy's a little bit full of himself, but at the same point, like, to come from where he came from and to make this much of yourself, you have to have a lot of self-confidence, and you have to believe in yourself. And also the results have shown that, like, he was right sort of about the way he feels about himself. So like, that was really revealing about him as a person.
Yeah, and he didn't get his first job because he was a former Barcelona player, because he was a professional at all. Like, he got it because he was coaching a local youth team and beat Barcelona. And so the coaches from Barcelona were like, hey, who's that guy? Let's maybe talk to him. And ended up talking to him and ended up getting that job, and then became what he is today on his own work, essentially. Like, not any part of it was given to him. And so yeah, he does come across as cocky sometimes, but it's hard to challenge him on a lot of the things he says because it seems like he's earned it.
Yeah, and he recruited Ilie to Barcelona when Ilie was 17, which I think was maybe an open question we had about whether they ever crossed paths there, but he was very clear that they did, and he was a part of Ilie getting there. I guess one other thing really quickly, we talked a couple weeks ago about maybe what we should expect out of Austin FC2. And he was very clear in this one about that it's a developmental league and he's not there to win. And I don't know if we need to belabor that because we've theorized on that, but it was good to hear him confirm sort of what we thought his approach was going to be.
Yeah, and the big quote there was, that year that I came, Austin FC2 won the championship. That was not my team. That was the work of other people. And so I'm not going to take credit for them winning. But how many of those players are playing in MLS? And he paused for effect. And I don't know if anybody knew the answer, but the answer is 0.
I was going to say, we all counted to 0, and then there we went. All right, let's get into the match itself. I'll go through the lineup pretty quick because I think it's exactly the lineup that we were expecting. Stuver in goal, Biru and Dessler at fullback, Cascante and Hindsight at center backs, Sanchez, the more deep-lying midfielder, Pereira and Wolff in the midfield, and then Bukari, Vasquez, and Obrian up top. We've talked about where we saw these guys play on various sides, but I think this is not surprising at all, right?
Yeah, there's maybe some thought that Sabovich might get a start. I didn't expect that. Oftentimes when you're working these guys in, you want them to get 15 minutes, then 30 minutes, then 45, and you want to be able to control it a bit more. And when you start someone, you're dependent on game state and things like that, and it's harder to schedule the substitution. And so even going to Portland this weekend, I still wouldn't expect him to start. But maybe he could in that one. The other one was whether Uzuni would be on the bench. There's some folks hoping that he would start or play, and I'm like, "Ah, guys, I'm gonna be shocked if he touches the field. Maybe he'll be on the bench, but a guy being here that soon, like there's no need to risk his health just out of eagerness to get him on the field. There like listen to the scientists, and I'm sure the scientists said like not yet.
Yeah, and so this is not in terms of who's on the field, who's on the bench. I think it's not surprising at all, and this is what Austin had. I think starting next week in Portland, when you do expect to see Uzuni, then it becomes a little bit of who doesn't make the game day
Yeah.
roster, right? You know, it kind of there's one more player in, then like the guys on the bench that didn't play were at Cleveland, which you have to have as a keeper, but then Bison, Svatak, Kolmanich, Super Dubersarski, like that becomes a real interesting thought process on who makes it in or maybe who doesn't when you have Uzuni on the field.
Let's get into some of the noteworthy moments of the game. So there's several like decent chances in the first 30 minutes or so. We mentioned the one that Vasquez kind of created for himself earlier. There's a really good moment where I think I'm thinking of the right one, but Dessler like has the ball deep over in the defensive corner, plays his way out of pressure, springs this quick attack, and it ends up with him playing across into Biru for a header that he just doesn't connect quite well on and goes just wide. Owen Wolff gets a really good chance. Bukari, you mentioned the one where he kind of dribbles across the whole box. He gets that chance. All that happens in the first 30 minutes or so. And then Kansas City, I think, ends the first half with 4 shots. All of their shots come between the 30th and 37th minute. And so there was really just that one little stretch where Austin lost control of the game a little bit, where really it was in their hands. Like Kansas City was not deciding anything that was going on in the field for most of that first half, except for those 7 minutes there. And
Yeah,
one of
and
them
I was gonna
was,
say, I was just gonna add, like if you look at X goal, they're both in 1 minute, and it was what we talked about. It was a shallowy shot that was saved, and then he got a follow up.
yeah. So that is one moment I want to talk about is Kansas City's attacking. We win the ball back, but then Biru gets a little bit, I don't know what the word, like cute, careless, cocky, and tries to play like a little flick ball over the top to, I think it was Bukari kind of in the half space there. But because Kansas City kind of had momentum going forward, all of their players were still moving towards their own goal. That pass gets cut out and it leads to this shot where Shallowy's in the box. Stuver sticks out a foot to save it, falls to a guy at the top of the box. Stuver does really well to get back across the face of goal, but there's still a lot of net open there that if Agata places it well, there's probably nothing Stuver can do. And luckily he blasted over the bar. But this is one of those moments like this is a thing that Estevez is probably going to have trouble communicating to his team because you talk about the freedom, the confidence that these guys are playing with. But in this moment, I think he's probably going to watch the film and say, okay, Beer, you need to be a bit more conservative here. Like, understand where you are, where the opposition is. Don't try to play that pass. Just boot it up the field. And that's fine in this moment. But you don't want to go too far that way and have players playing too conservative or too scared or being nervous about doing things. And so that's a tricky balance to strike. But Biru found himself on the wrong side of the scale on that one. We get to halftime and Kansas City, so they made a few big upgrades in the offseason. None of those guys started in this game, but they put two of them on at halftime. So Garcia and Dejan Joveljic come on at the half. And Danny Pereira gets a really big chance right after the second half starts. Bukari plays a back heel on the left touchline to play Owen into space. He hits a hard cross into the box. It's just a little bit behind Vasquez. Vasquez does really well to kind of spin and get a foot on it and lays it off to Danny Pereira. And he skies it over the crossbar there. So in this game, like these are the moments when I'm saying Austin deserved to win it. They got the chances, but in a different game against a different opponent, in a game where Willie Agata is a bit more accurate, these moments matter. And although they were kind of dominant, this is one of the things they'll be looking at and saying, okay, this has to be a little bit better going forward.
Yeah, it's kind of the best possible outcome where you get the win and the coach gets plenty of opportunities to tell people things they need to work on, right? Or ways they need to connect better. So we can build and I mean, not to steal from the preview that we're going to do, but if you're going to play against a team that you have some things to work on, playing against this Portland club, which seems a bit in disarray, is probably a great way to continue this narrative of improvement while learning to play with each other.
Yeah. So we get the Bukari face goal in the 76th minute. A few chances for both sides going forward after that. I think Austin's biggest one after that was in the 81st minute where Diego Rubio had come on at this point for Owen Wolff and was playing kind of that hybrid 10 position. Plays a really nice through ball to find Vasquez running in behind into the 18-yard box, hits it first time with his left foot and rocks it off the bar. But the pass from Rubio is really nice, but to have the confidence that Vasquez was making that run, I think having someone who like Brandon's making that run every time, and so I know I can just play this. That's going to be really big for this team. And to Vasquez just did so many little things like that where I often rewatch the games on my computer so I can have this speed controller app and have like keyboard shortcuts to do 15 seconds forward, 15 seconds backwards. Anytime there's a ball played vertically or in behind, I'll often do the 15 seconds backward and then just watch Vasquez for a while. That is it. We're talking about like Vasquez being really good moving off the ball. Watch him in those moments. Like he's really good at it. And it's good to see that his teammates are learning his tendencies and knowing that he's going to do it and trusting that if I play this ball, he's already making that run.
Yeah, and I think this is probably a good time to get into talking about individual player performances because I think Kansas City got like one shot in the last 40 minutes. And that was Rosero in extra time. So I don't know if there's any too much to add on it. Because like I want to talk about Vasquez, which you did there, but also going back to the face goal and going back to the way this guy played, like that corner from Owen Wolff. The reason that it hit like Bukari in the face is because it was it was a beautiful corner, right? It was so threatening, like it was the perfect corner. And I feel like people have criticized Owen's corner ability before, and maybe justifiably so, but like that was a beautiful ball, and that guy, he played like a dude all night. Like he was the strongest performer on the field for Austin, I feel like, overall.
Owen was immense. Like he was very, very good. So talking about the roles that guys are playing, oftentimes the last couple of years, we would see Driussi and Ring almost playing interchangeably with the role that they were playing. In this setup, that is not the case. Owen has his role, Danny has his role, and they are most of the game not responsible or moving into the same spaces or doing the same things. Owen is playing that 9.5, 10 Driussi role. And I think he did it in this game better than Driussi did it for most of the last 2 years. I'm not saying Owen is a better soccer player than Driussi, but I think because Owen doesn't have to be the guy in the team, that it allows him to play that role with more focus and more patience instead of forcing it and feeling like he has to go be the one on the ball. And so he's often starting a bit higher, is almost a second forward, dropping into those half spaces, and they just kept finding him in those spaces. He'd receive on the half turn and then use his skill, his acceleration, his athleticism to get past that first defender and then make the defense sweat. And he did it over and over and over. And the shot, I think it was like the 21st minute, he gets that shot off that's just wide. The the camera zooms in on him and he's got a big smile on his face and he kind of like slaps his leg like he's disappointed the shot didn't go in, but you can see in his eyes like I'm excited about what just happened. And I don't know who he was talking to, but he looks up and says, all day, like give me the ball in that spot. It's there. I want it. And I love seeing that from him. My biggest uh, criticism of Owen is that he played too timid over the last couple of years. When he plays boldly, he's exciting, and he never looked scared once in this game.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. He's just like a different. Maybe it's the frosted tips. He's like grown up as a human. He looks like, I mean, he looks like a different person, just physically like a different person. And I think maybe some of it's the confidence. Some of it's just the fact that he's like, he just turned 20, so he's still growing as a human. But definitely, I love what I saw out of him. You talk about Vasquez. I think it's super exciting to see like what he can do. None of it connected necessarily, but you saw the dangerous runs. You saw him trying stuff. You saw the confidence. Estevez talked in the post game about that it was on him, on the coach, that like Brandon didn't get better service, which, I don't know. That's great to hear from the coach. I think he maybe was a little bit hard on himself. Like I feel like, Vasquez was somewhat dangerous in this game, but it's just good to hear that there's still. I mean, it's a very new project, and we didn't necessarily talk about all the national previews because we didn't have time for it last week. But a lot of what people talked about that were skeptical of Austin's success were like how these pieces may or may not fit together. And it seems like they have a coach that is committed to finding a way to make the pieces fit together, whether on paper it seems like it's a natural fit or not.
Yeah, and the taking blame for not getting Vasquez enough service, I think we talked about Bukari feeling a little bit disconnected at times. Like that is a structural thing. That is a thing that will be Estevez's job to fix for the most part. But regardless, even if Estevez is thinking, these guys did a bad job and they should have gotten him more service, it's usually a good idea for him to take that heat, deflect it away from the players. And it's a thing that like I disagreed with the fact that Wolff, like people would say that he threw players under the bus a lot. I don't think he did it as often as people claimed, but he rarely deflected criticism away from the players in that deft of a way that Estevez did, which like I don't know, we just keep getting more and more reasons to like Estevez, and from like a 30,000-foot critical view, more and more reasons why the heat will be less on him if they start losing.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. But I feel like this is a little bit like talking about our ex-girlfriend. Like, I need us to agree that this game is the last game that we use like positive talk about Estevez, like, and couch it in negative talk about Josh Wolff. Like, I feel like we could just talk about Nico going forward. And I feel like more than most people were ready to do that. And I just want us like officially on the air, hold each other accountable to like just taking it positively going forward.
I don't think we should say never, but I think you're right that it is more fun and more valuable to focus on what we have now.
Okay. Well, we talked about Ilie as captain. I don't think I want to have anything else to add on that. Like, who else? Oh my gosh.
Ilie's game was, I mean, he was really, really good. We talk about, I don't know where this came from. Like, I think Mike mentioned it on Swoon Tower, but I think they used it on Extra Time a lot. But piano carriers versus piano players. Ilie did a little bit of both in this game. He did a lot of the dirty work, won a lot of aerial headers, tactical fouls whenever we would lose the ball and they were in transition. He was always in the right spot. And if he felt like he was going to get beat several times, like he did it a couple times, Julio did it a couple times, a few other guys, like, we're beat, I'm just going to take this dude out. And sometimes that is the answer. Like, that is what you do. And to have a guy who knows that like when that is the answer, and then also having the depth in the midfield that we can afford for a guy to get too many yellows every once in a while. It's like, okay, we have another good midfielder that we can slot in. That is going to be part of this strategy. And that part of the defensive transition just looks so much better. And I think a lot of it came down to Ilie and Dessler in those rest defense moments where we lose it, those two guys are in the right spot and just attacking the ball immediately. And for that reason, Kansas City just in the aside from those few stretches, they did not get into their own half. They were playing in their defensive half and had a really hard time getting out of it.
So I was going to say, now given the talk about a guy that made a bold challenge, it's your chance to deliver a sermon on Mikkel Dessler, which I feel like
Yeah.
nobody can do as well as you. So I just wanted to give you a moment to be like, Mikkel Dessler, discuss.
Yeah, Dessler was great. I feel like we could put him and Ilie in a similar category here, where they did a lot of the dirty work, came up really big in some defensive moments. There's a moment in the 72nd minute where Joveljic slips through a couple of defenders, and he's in 1v1 with Stuver, like, I don't know, 10 yards right in the center of the goal. Dessler reacts, bodies him off the ball, turns, carries the ball out of danger, and clears it. That was huge. And like, okay, big defensive moment, but then several offensive moments where he plays out of a really tight space or makes a really nice pass or plays a 1-2 up the side and springs an attack. Like, just so useful going both ways. He was really, really solid in this game. And this is what I thought he could be. And we saw flashes of it last year. I think you're seeing with the preseason, with some stronger players around him, that this can be what he can be for a whole season and be really valuable to this team.
Who else do you want to talk about? I mean, I was going through, I was writing notes originally, and I was like, that guy was good, that guy was good, that guy was good. It's like I can't necessarily, I don't want to talk about everybody having done their job well, but it feels like nobody let the team down. It was a team win, and like we talked about, there were moments of disconnection, and there were structural things that maybe weren't perfect, but I mean, everybody pulled their own weight, I feel like, in this game.
Yeah, I think there's not a bad performance to speak of. I do want to talk about Danny for a little bit, talking about the role that is different from what Owen was doing. I think it was very clear, like, Owen was the more attacking guy. He is the nominal 10. Danny is the nominal 8. And for that reason, I think Danny was a little less visible. He's not the guy he was the last few years where we're always giving him the ball. He is the only guy in the team who's going to progress the ball forward. That was Ilie. Ilie was the tempo setter. Danny dropped in and took part in that, but he was often just kind of a role player. And I think that's good. Like, I think he's going to be good in that spot. I also feel like he had a really responsible game. Talking about the transition moments, Biru on the left side would often float to the interior and then make that inside run, and he kind of had a bit more freedom to go wherever. When Dessler would float inside sometimes, but he was often pushing up that right flank. And Danny did a really good job of knowing where Dessler was. And if Dessler pushed forward, there's one moment in particular where they're kind of in a similar altitude on the field. And Dessler has the ball, and Danny thinks about making a run, and he kind of reads the situation and says, no, if Dessler's there, I know there's nobody behind him. And he takes a step back. And that is the right decision in that moment, because if that's Owen in that spot, like, maybe his role is to push forward, is to get a little higher because he knows someone else's job is to stay behind him. Danny knew that, like, okay, if Dessler's here, I need to move back into this rest defense shapes in case we lose the ball. But then also knew when Dessler was still behind him, I can go forward. I can get into that front line. And so I think in that regard, he had a really good game. I think he was less impactful if we're comparing those two midfielders than Owen was, which gives a big question of, like, when Sabovic is healthy, if I were making the decision right now, I'm dropping Danny and putting Sabovic into that spot. And that could change. We'll see. But Owen was, if he plays any semblance of what he looked like in this game, that's unbenchable.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. We've talked about this before, and this is the first time we've seen it happen in reality. But the fact that you can bring John Gallagher, Diego Rubio, and at this point Sabovic, but maybe in future games, Pereira or Sanchez or Wolff off the bench is light years above what Austin has had in the past. Like, I'd love John Gallagher as the utility player both as a winger and as a fullback, depending upon what the team
Yeah.
needs. And he
Yeah,
didn't
it's
like set the world on fire in his 30 minutes, but like he was a solid dude and he was a threat.
yeah, Estevez talked about like the threat in the second half where it kind of opened up a bit more. And he said, like, yeah, the teams get leggy. It's early in the season. There's gonna be more space. And to have a guy like John Gallagher to be the one running in that space is a great option off the bench. And then Dessler goes down with cramps in the last few minutes. You drop Gallagher to right back, and it's seamless. Like he just floats back
Yeah.
there and fits right in. Like what an asset to have.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so I think do you want to just close maybe this part of the show with like your overall takeaways from the match? Like what were your highlights maybe we haven't covered or like big themes you want to make sure that we hit on?
Yeah, I think just the main thing is what is the conclusion of this game? And a lot of encouraging stuff that we saw. Still some things that are maybe aren't quite connecting, aren't quite gelling together entirely, but a lot of positives. That being said, Kansas City's not a terribly strong team. They did not start their three biggest signings of the offseason. And so I don't think Austin FC should be too cocky coming out of this one. And you talked about still having like learning moments to give. I feel like this is a really good confidence building game that I don't think if they'd have scored 4 goals, maybe they would be cocky. But because they got one and that one was a little bit lucky, that they'll say, like, okay, that felt really good most of the game, but I want more. And I think there's more to be had. And I think it was kind of a good mix and kind of if you were Estevez, like you said earlier, and we're hoping for like the best outcome to motivate your team to do more. I think this was a version of what that looks like.
Yeah, it seems very close to that. And one of the things we talked about last week is that every week when we talk about the last week of preseason, we forget something. Usually we talk about the first home game, we forget something. That something is usually we forget to talk about the TIFO. So I wrote a note in to make sure that we talk about that. So this is a Joel Corral designed TIFO, like here from day one. It has the bat, which I feel like we've seen before. Maybe it's from Los Verdes designs or stickers or whatever, or maybe just in Slack. So really well done, really big, included the whole supporter section, had some player likenesses on the top. And then the other things that I thought were interesting in that were there was gosh, now I forget the guy's name. The guy that does the little like backward parrot things all around town.
Oh, yeah, I think the Instagram handle is like that bird or something like
Yeah.
that. But
So that actual that
if
person
you've
did that
driven in
bird.
Austin,
Yeah.
you've seen this bird graffitied on places. And I thought, yeah, that was a great touch to get 2 graffiti artists to come in and tag the bridge with like the actual artist doing it. That was a really great touch. And I want to give credit to Mark Tost as well, because I believe this was his concept that he said he's been working on for years. And it's the whole thing is brilliant. Like it's on its face, like, okay, it's the bridge and there's a bat, but always here year after year is kind of a nod to the bats migrating and coming back every summer and coming to that bridge and being fans like, okay, no matter what happens, good or bad, we're going to be here in February to cheer you on. And yeah, it's really nice. I thought, and the execution by Joel was really great too.
Yeah, so they have like a player in every jersey and the player part. And then the other part I was talking to a friend of the show, Greg Meyer, and he said, originally I guess they were going to do the TIFO practice on Thursday, which was going to be when the weather was crazy. And they ended up moving up to Tuesday, which is when the crazy weather moved in. And they ended up having like at the last minute a call for volunteers and they had like 50 people show up to like put that thing on the net and try to lift it. But they did lift it once, but apparently it was also like when it started getting super windy in the interest of like not launching supporters, out the edge of the stands, they had to lift it once and call it a night. But like awesome work on behalf of the fan community to pull that off. Cause like it seems for people who don't keep up with this a lot, like it seems like a really simple thing for this giant 100-foot wide design piece of art to go up for 3 minutes. But like there's so much that goes into it. I just think we should call that out and respect that.
We were Ashley and I did paint some of the tifo and we were telling people that when it was going up. What we didn't say is the part we painted ended up getting just painted over because Derek Ensign told us the wrong color to put.
Oh,
So
no.
we painted our little section, and I think they ended up painting over it the next day.
Well, that's okay, man. You're still a part of it. Like, in your heart, you know that you're a part of it. All right, you want to take our next break and then talk about preview Portland and cover a little bit more of the club news?
Yeah, let's do it.
Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by Sage Wilson Realty. The Sage Wilson team is made up of Austin experts who are client-focused and have over 30 years of combined real estate experience. Our friends at Sage Wilson Realty are giving away 2 tickets to an upcoming match. You can fill out the form in the show notes for your chance to win.
If you or someone you know are in need of Sage real estate advice in Austin, talk to our friends at Sage Wilson Realty. Be sure to check them out online at sagewilson.com.
Our premier sponsor is McGuire Woods Consulting, helping clients in the public affairs space from lobbying at the local, statewide, and federal levels to digital and communications campaigns across the country.
McGuire Woods Consulting has offices in 10 MLS cities and is proud to support Moon Tower Soccer and support Austin FC's march to their 3rd Copa Tejas. Contact our friends at McGuire Woods Consulting at mwcllc.com for more information. All right, we are back. We are going to preview this Saturday's game away in Portland. But first, there's a couple of pieces of Austin FC news. Let's get into that first, Jeremiah.
Yes, let's start with on Friday, we get the announcement that Damian Loss signed a contract extension for 1 additional year, now taking him through guaranteed through the end of 2027 with an option for 2028. Continues to remain on loan at Louisville City FC for 2025. If for some reason Austin needs to call him back, they can. Do you think that this continued extension means that Loss is somewhat likely to be the goalkeeper of the future in Austin? Because we're looking years out now at this point in time.
Yeah, I don't know that it necessarily means that they see him as the goalkeeper of the future in Austin, but I think it does mean they see him as a goalkeeper of the future
In
And
Major League Soccer. Yeah,
he's
somewhere.
going to be playing for someone, and they want to benefit from that one way or another, whether it be him being their goalkeeper or someone else paying them a bunch of money for him to be their goalkeeper. But yeah, I mean,
it's fair.
from Damien's perspective, I'm sure he would like to be playing in MLS right now, but I would also imagine he knows his level and I would hope isn't arrogant in a way that says like, oh, I should be in Major League Soccer now, and is taking this as like, okay, I'm at a good level to continue to learn and grow. I'm still quite young, and I'm earning an MLS paycheck while playing in USL, which I'm sure he's enjoying that part of it as well.
Yeah, that probably works out. Yeah, he's still only 22, which seems crazy because he's been a part of this Austin. We've talked about it for years now at this point in time, but still very, very young, especially as a goalkeeper.
Goalkeepers develop late as well. So yeah, 22 is very young for a goalkeeper still.
Well, we kind of teased the food press conference. I think the most interesting note that came from that was that La Barbecue, which we believe to be the only Michelin star award-winning restaurant to appear in a Major League Soccer stadium, will now be taking.
That's
taking the
probably true, right?
Yeah. I think I think Andy Locknick said that. He said, like, I haven't done the research, but I have to imagine nobody else. You know, have you been to FC Frisco and had like nachos and hot dog as the most exclusive things on the menu? Like, not a lot of that. I've actually never had La Barbecue.
Oh, I've
read
only
about
had it once or twice, and this was years ago. So these things change and all that. I don't know about all that. When I had it, it was very, very good.
So I'm really excited, and I don't know that it'll taste exactly the same as in the restaurant, but it seems a lot easier for me to get if it's in that corner than it would be like going to East Austin and waiting a while.
And like barbecue is the thing that kind of does lend itself well to that setting too, right? It's like a fixed amount of time. We're going to run people through a line and feed them food until it's gone. That's not much different than what they're doing in their store, right? So the Valentina's was there for a while, and I thought the quality of that was quite good. Probably not up to par for what was in their restaurant, but it was still really good for stadium food.
And the smell from that corner when the
Yeah.
barbecue's smoking is amazing. And then I mentioned that the Captain Morgan Club is no more, and we don't know what it will be. I wanted to tie that into a thing that it's going to get you very excited, and that is that we announced that Pantalones Tequila is the third official club sponsor. Like, does it become the Pantalones Tequila Club? Is that what we're looking for?
Oh God, that would be surely not, right? But maybe it's. I mean, it was booze before.
It was
Maybe it
booze
would be
before, yeah.
now.
And why is it Pantalones Tequila Organico, which I could be wrong about, but I feel like that should be a feminine descriptor for tequila.
Is it? Does it say organico with an O?
Organico, yeah.
I'm pretty sure tequila is feminine.
I would think so. Maybe let's talk about that. Why that tequila is bad. Anyhow, if you want to, if you don't, that's fine. I feel like you've gone all caps
I've
on
already
it before.
spoken my piece on that on the show. Regardless, I mean, celebrity booze in general, I stay away from it. So I'm not going to be rushing to the Pantalones stand to get Matthew McConaughey's tequila, but I'm sure somebody will.
Oh, before we get into the game, then this reminds me of one random thing. So I visit my parents are from basically Gainesville, Texas, is the nearest town, and we went to the local Tex-Mex place 2 weeks ago, and their like signature margarita had Patron in it, and the guy's like, Patron's just for the marketing. Like, I'm going to give you the good stuff on the side, and I'm like, cool, man. Like, I didn't know we were going to have like authentic Mexican tequila in Gainesville, Texas, but let's go for it. So he did it, and I drank it, and he's like, how'd you like that? I was like, well, it's pretty good. And he goes, Casamigos. That's my secret. I'm like, no, that's just like, I was expecting something his grandfather made that he like drove up in the car with him that you can only get in Jalisco. I'm like, no, you can't. Casamigos cannot be your secret ingredient.
I mean, maybe it is. I've never actually had it, so maybe it's good.
It's another celebrity tequila, though.
The ensigns always have plastic Coke bottles of artisanal mezcal that they bring up from Mexico every time, and so that's what you were picturing. But instead, it was is that George Clooney who's Casamigos?
I think it's George Clooney. I think so. Yeah, good for him. Okay, let's talk about Portland. Sorry, we're like way off the rails now. So I'll start. Like last season, Portland finished 9th in the West, just ahead of Austin. Split with each other. So Portland won in Austin, I think 2-0. Austin won the return. In Portland, 1-0. It was like a Danny Pereira goal that was kind of weird. Don't remember a lot of that, but not, kind of in the same range as Austin goes overall. Obviously, the big story of the offseason is Evander going out, which is a great loss in terms of talent, but he was also kind of an agent of chaos. So I'm not sure that like overall it hurts him that bad. And then they got David da Costa from Lens, I think he's Portuguese, is a replacement. Different kind of player, did come off the bench, just like we talked about Kansas City's big signings not starting, but playing some. Came off the bench and played the second half in the opener, which Portland lost of it as a repeat of almost the end of last season. Portland gets blown up by Vancouver in the openers. They lost 4-1 in the opener with Kamala Miller picking up a red card.
In the 11th minute. So they played down in the 11th minute. Almost they played the whole game.
Yeah. So that's relevant to Austin because Kamal Miller will not be playing in the Austin match, and they seem to be somewhat deficient in terms of like starting quality center backs for Portland. So like, what do we think? Is this something we should expect to win 4-1 again? Are we going to be disappointed if Austin picks up a 1-0 win on the road?
Going to Portland is always hard. Like it's an intimidating stadium. It's turf, I believe, right? And so that's something to get used to. The weather could be a factor. I mean, they played in freezing rain the other night, so maybe that's not going to affect Austin too much, but it probably feels a little bit different when you're in someone else's stadium, having flown there the day before, and it's just different. So going to Portland is never going to be easy, so I'm not going to say Austin's definitely going to win 5-0, but having Miller out is a big deal. They've got other center backs, but he's one of their better ones. Like he's one of their better players. So they'll miss him on that red. Another big question is Da Costa. He went 45 the other night, so maybe you could see him starting in this one. He is, from what I've seen and from what I've heard, looks like a very talented player. So he is still fresh and maybe not fully seeded into the team, but he'll be a big factor if he does play and how much he plays. On Austin's side, I think this is where Estevez does have choices, like the horses for courses kind of take. Like if he does want to be a bit more conservative, and if Sabovic is ready to go, that could be a really good option to have him in a bit, like sitting a bit more deep next to Ilie at times, and just playing a bit more conservatively on the road. I'm still not sure Sabovic is going to be ready to start, but if he is, that is an option you could see. I'm guessing we'll at least see Uzuni on the bench for this one. I still do not expect him to start, and depending on game state, maybe he doesn't even play. But I would expect he'll at least be on the bench for this one.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. And you mentioned this talking about the Sporting KC match. Just you have a lot more flexibility when you bring in a guy off the bench and to see what you can get out of him. So yeah, it seems like a spot where you could see him maybe for a half if Austin needs a spark, maybe for 20 minutes if Austin like looks good and just they like Nico wants to get him on the field and like give him some time. I wouldn't expect to see him start. I saw nothing out of the rest of the Austin FC players that make you think that anybody else is going to change. Like, doesn't seem like Julio did anything that would cause him to now be on the bench behind Svatak.
I think with that one, I mean, in a similar vein to Sabovic, Julio was a good choice for this SKC game because we had the ball so much of the game. Julio, I think he led the team in progressive passes, and he's really good in that part of the field. But if you are going to be a bit more conservative, sit back a little bit more, and the passing is a bit less important, maybe you do see Svatak get slotted in, and you go with the more defense first option as opposed to the passing first option with Cascante. So that'll be interesting. Another thing, like playing on the road, I know Estevez will say we're going to go out, we're going to try to win, but if it hits the clock strikes 75 when we're up 1-0, maybe they throw in a third center back. Like that could be another thing to look for, and like the transitioning into a different shape during the game. We saw them do it in preseason, and I think it's a thing that you would like to have that club in your bag. And so that'll be interesting to see if we get into that scenario, to see how Estevez adapts and changes his team in that moment. Some other notes about Portland. So they have some other injuries. So Santi Moreno, I don't think he played in this last game. Cabecito Rodriguez did not play in this last game. And so they have some other injuries of guys who would normally be nailed on starters that might not be available as well.
Yeah, and this one's going to be at 9:30 Central. So this is another one of those, I don't take a nap in the afternoon to make sure you can stay up and check it all out later on. Sometimes we get these. I was thinking we don't always talk about the media availabilities, and sometimes we get questions. So we happen to get it today. So I just wanted to say, and this is not that as important maybe necessarily this week because we don't have any questions about injuries or anything that we know about, but there'll be Nico and a player on Thursday and the match on Saturday. So if we find out somebody picked up a knock or whatever, like don't expect any news until Thursday. I think is what I would say for fans. Because I know a lot of people last week were asking about when we all saw the, Bukari pull up, like when would we find out about what had happened, if he was going to play or not going to play. That usually is when the press availability with the coaches. So that'll be on Thursday for everybody.
Yeah, and another thing that I've really liked about this year is like Nico will kind of show his hand sometimes and say like, "Oh, this is what I liked," or "This is why I did this thing," and he did that in the post game press conference in this one as well. And so we might actually learn something in these press conferences.
Yeah, it's kind of refreshing to hear that out of him. And then I do want to talk about. We'll plug the Los Verdes watch party because folks asked. So it'll be at Hop Squad, Dough Squad Pizza on site. Have you had Dough Squad Pizza? Because Jackson Bentley loves it. It goes we're big fans.
I've eaten it quite a few times. I know they have some other options occasionally on certain days or certain times. I don't think I've been there to try any of the other stuff they do. I think they do empanadas sometimes and all kinds of other things like on very specific schedules. But I've had the pizza
Yeah.
quite a few times. It's
Yeah,
pretty tasty.
the pizza's super tasty. So that'll be watch party at 7:30, kickoff at 9:30. Families encouraged to come. No marker performance, no match. That's one of my favorite things about March. Sorry. One of my favorite things about reading Reddit is like every single home game when somebody asks when and where the March is going to be. And we're like, no, that doesn't happen every week. It only happens a few times a year because it is a logistical nightmare, I think, for people to pull off.
And it's hot.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hot a lot of times. Breaker Lane is a major east-west thoroughfare in Austin, and drivers get kind of grumpy when you try to walk across the road in front of them. So don't expect a march. It'll be on indoors just because the weather is always a little bit iffy at this time of year.
But you can know if you go, you're not going to get caught out in cold rain. You'll have a roof over your head.
You will. And if you haven't been to Hop Squad in a while, the in-brewery screen options have improved greatly. If you haven't been since like 2021, right? Because at one point in time, there's just like the one giant projector screen and nothing else. But now there are several TVs, so anywhere inside you will be able to watch the game and enjoy it and hang out with a lot of your friends if you happen to be able to make it out.
All right. Anything else, Jeremiah, before we wrap up?
Landon. Wait. Landon, should we actually commit to like soon we're going to choose what the Patreon stuff is? This is an accountability online. We're very close to picking out the Patreon package.
Yes, to the extent where we actually have them picked out. We're working on logistical things and like working with the designer to finish one thing and all the boring stuff that I struggle to find time to do alongside my day job. But we are getting close. We are getting close.
Yeah, I don't need a date. I just feel like we should make sure that people know that we're getting close because we kind of run through this every week and then don't have an answer. And this stuff is going to be cool.
And this stuff is cool. Yes, yeah. It's very cool. I always, this also happens every year. I panic because, okay, what have we not done? What will people actually care about? And somehow we always come up with a thing that we end up being very excited about. And that is true again this year. I'm really excited about the stuff we're going to have this year again. All right. I think we're good to close now.
Yeah, let's do it now.
I'd like to remind you to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Come find us on the internet, wherever you are on the internet, and check out the Patreon where you can get some of these cool things. And we're kind of in the sweet spot. Maybe I should put a date on this of when I'll stop sending out last year's stuff. But as of right now, you can double dip. So if you sign up today, I'll send you the 2024 kit. And then as soon as 2025 kits are available, I'll send you that one too. So this is kind of a sweet spot to sign up if you haven't signed up already. Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back next week to review the Austin away game in Portland and then preview the next home match, which will be against the Colorado Rapids, and then cover any other Austin FC news that breaks. Until then, I'm Landon Cottam.
I'm Jeremiah Bentley.
We'll catch you next time.
When no one is around.
Think for nothings you never.
La gente.
Oh my God.
Because they love the cheap boom boom sauce.
Yeah.